right now are poring over evidence, trying to find a motive for yesterday's mass shooting at a Catholic school mass. We are learning some chilling new details from the Shooter's Journal, revealing an obsession with mass shootings and attacks on schools specifically. Here's what the Minneapolis police chief said earlier on this network.
Everything that we have seen so far is really a classic pathway to a mass shooter. It's someone who had sort of a deranged obsession with previous active shooters and mass shootings, and someone who harbored just frankly a whole lot of hate for a whole wide variety of people and groups.
We've also learned that the shooter, Robin Westman, timed the release of a manifesto on YouTube. NBC News reviewed that video, which shows weapons and magazines etched with racial slurs, anti-Semitic messages, references to the Holocaust and the Catholic Church. One even included the words, quote, "Kill Donald Trump." Joining me now is MSNBC Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Dilanian, former FBI supervisor and MSNBC National Security and Intelligence analyst Rob D'Amico. Here with me in studio, Jonathan Metzl, a psychologist and author of the book, What We've Become, Living and Dying in a Country of Arms. Ken, the police say they are looking literally at hundreds of pieces of evidence, including the shooter's writings. Where does this investigation stand?
Yeah, well, Chris, initially FBI Director Kash Patel said that the FBI was investigating this as an act of domestic terrorism targeting Catholics. But as you just described, the evidence is showing that this is much more complicated than that. And sadly, this reflects a pattern among mass shooters that we've seen going back many, many years. What we see here is a chaotic diversity of ideological motives and an obsession with previous mass shooters, especially Adam Lanza, who carried out the Sandy Hook massacre back in 2012. That name was inscribed on one of the weapons that was shown in this YouTube video. And what I've learned over the years of studying these incidents is that there is a subculture of people who are obsessed with mass shooters, and they often gather together in the dark corners of the internet. And generally, when you look into their past writings, there's a trail of horrific things that if only people had seen it in advance, they might have taken action. And in some cases, I've covered stories where they did take action. In one case, an FBI team visited a student who had threatened a school shooting, but deemed he wasn't a threat, and then a year later, he shot up a school in New Mexico. So that's what we're seeing in this case, is a sort of across the board a collection of obsessions, not a clear motive. I mean, terrorism has a clear definition. It's trying to use violence to achieve a political objective. It's not at all clear that that was the case, but obviously the FBI and local authorities are going to continue to pour through this evidence to try to discern some type of motive, although they never may end up coming to a firm conclusion, Chris.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's more complicated now, Rob. I mean, obviously they get electronic search warrants, they go through devices, but the number of places that people can live online seem to be so much broader than they have ever been before. What do they even look for? Where do they even look, Rob?
It's so tough between encrypted apps and chat groups on those, Telegram, Discord. They all have different groups. Then you can go in even the dark web, and you can go so many different places. As we saw this with terrorism, like the radicalization, the spewing of hatred comes out, and they sit in their basement, as you know, Director Comey said. You sit in your basement alone, and you start going down these paths. But I find it hard to believe, with everything that we've seen with his weapons and his magazines written on them, and how much hate he had, that no one saw this. No one, like if I saw someone with a weapon at a range that had writing on the magazines, you bet I'm going to be reading it. And if I see the stuff that was on there, call someone. And as we talked yesterday about the National Violence Prevention Hotline, that's not just for people thinking of doing violent acts. It's for people that observe loved ones or friends or someone that they're even close to, that they're worried about, that can call, because it's so important that when you see something like this, say something, because there are times in there, if you talk to people, that may have been prevented this crisis.
Yeah, going back, Jonathan, to what Ken talked about, we thought for such a long time that there's a specific ideology, right? Radical Islamic, terrorism, and that, we can put somebody in a box. Now, one researcher explained it to NPR this way: it's really about violence for the sake of violence. Are people changing the way that they look at terror and how to stop these homegrown terrorists.
Right. I mean, what we call it, first of all, is so important, right? Is it terrorism? Is it radicalization? Is it a crime and mass murder? It's probably all those things. But it's very difficult to say. Like, I agree with the point that was just made that of all the people who are like threatening online and doing all these things, figuring out, oh, we're going back and we're going to find out what happened. It's just really hard to do in prospect. And I say that because a lot of times, I'm a psychiatrist, right? Family members are concerned, people are concerned, but it's not like a mass shooter just snapped and had a psychotic break. A lot of times it's a lifetime or decades-long pattern of worsening symptoms, characterologic things, threats. And so thinking about what is this? Is this mental illness? Is this radicalization? I just think it's something that's going to take time. And I agree with the point that it's really going to take years to figure out what really happened.
So figuring it out in one thing is one thing. Preventing it would seem at this stage is the more important thing because we keep seeing it. How do we do that from a psychological perspective? When does somebody need to understand that this is not just, some kid who's having a bad day?
Well, I think that obviously research is important, right? Every one of these shootings gives us clues about how to prevent the next one. And so I think researchers like me get funding from different sources that are being cut right now, but I would encourage that we have more funding into research, think about domestic terrorism internally. And I do think that this question of kind of what's the role of the parents, what's the role of the family, what's the role of the psychological community. What I saw in my book, What We've Become, was about the Waffle House mass shooting. And it appeared very straightforward the first day afterwards. A white shooter killed young adults of color. And as the story unraveled, even though people thought it was straightforward right away, it turned out to be about family dynamics, about missed chances, about the FBI coming and missing. And so I think that we really need to just keep learning from these cues, but also the story of how did the person get the guns? How did the guns get to the shooting? All these factors. It's not just about the person, it's about the gun and the context.